Well, nice to see actually that we have kind of a crowd this morning. Welcome to this Expand the World session on SuperOffice Service. First of all, I have to apologize. I have a kind of a cold, so sometimes I might have to cough a little bit, but I'll try to minimize that. My name is Niels from Broekhoven. I work as a business consultant and project manager in the SuperOffice Benelux, and I will show you everything today about optimizing and making your customer contacts more enjoyable with SuperOffice Service. Let's try this one. Yeah. So first question is actually, why would you like to do so? Well, that is actually all about something we call perception. Welcome. Because perception is actually always telling two different sides of the story, and as I guess Niels showed you yesterday, the customer service benchmark actually showed some terrible figures when it comes to how do companies actually react to all kind of incoming requests. And some other figures actually, as you can see, 80% of the companies believe actually that they are delivering a very superior service. Well, if we look on this perception from the other side, it's only 8% of all the customers who actually believe that they are receiving this perfect service. Yeah, so this is a very big difference, and the biggest reason behind that is actually because things are most of the time not very well organized behind this. So things just end up with piles of papers, post-its, and actually this is what we gathered from one of the first customer service cases that we did. They just put everything into Outlook folders, so they had like no owner of incoming emails. They didn't have any message spreading, like which email does actually belong to which other email. And there were also no notifications or escalations on anything that came in. And these were actually real figures. So if you look at like the amount of unread emails in those folders, you can imagine how bad a customer service can be if you have so many not read emails. So why would I like to use software actually for customer service? Well, our vision, and I must say, well, I've stole this slide a little bit from Sverre. We like to keep track on stuff we need to do, or actually also the things that we have done. So now let's look at what stuff actually could be. So it is keeping track. Really detailed, keeping track of what we have to do. We could be a team within a company, could also be a company as a whole. The stuff is of course incoming stuff like using all channels, email, chat, web forms, etc. And the things we need to do is what we need to do, we need to monitor it. We need to make sure that things we need to do don't end up just somewhere, but there's always a mechanism or a process or organization behind it. Also, supporting this with notifications and escalation. And in the end, if we want to know what have we done, we need a 360 view on every person or every customer in CRM. If you, by the way, have any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand. Stuff is something very generic. Stuff can be anything which is coming in from customer service. It can be a finance question, a complaint coming in, all kind of product questions, technical questions, functional questions, etc. Orders, just incoming orders. Processing of incoming orders. Not every order is always going through a salesperson, but sometimes just goes through a certain channel, and you need to make sure that the process behind this order is correct. Things like sample requests, signing up for events, IT support, or even contact forms which are filled in. And this actually is the core of everything we try to monitor within SuperOffice Service. So stuff is something you really have to be creative about what stuff actually is. So how are we going to do this in SuperOffice? And therefore, of course, I want to do this in a live demo. So let me click something on right here. There it is. Okay, so in other sessions this morning, and people who did address it, we saw in the navigator that we have all kind of modules. We have company module, contact, sales, as we saw demonstrated by Alex. This session is of course all about service. But be aware that in a lot of cases, actually the process does not start in SuperOffice. It starts at the customer's desk. The customer has a question, has a problem, has something that you would like to address to your organization. So actually we have Mr. Harry Jansma, a very international name, and he would like to send an email because he has a question about the invoice that he received, about something with the discount not being correct. So he sends this to like the finance department of his supplier. Just simply by clicking the send button. In SuperOffice, this is where, of course, we have the company card. In order to go to the service module, it's very easy, just click on service and you will automatically land up in the dashboard. The dashboard shows you everything which is currently open. So it's not like your historical statistics, but it's really the stuff that you need to work on right now. Every time that you just click on this dashboard again, it will automatically be refreshed. So actually everything that you can see in the dashboard, it is clickable. Sorry about that. It is clickable. SuperOffice Service, it collects the email that's coming in regularly and processes everything into a request into the database. Let me see. Yeah, so actually if we go to the inbox of Mr. Harry, see we have to wait a little longer. No, nothing coming in yet. That's always a good thing on live demos. So what you can see is that you have kind of the same structure as you also have in SuperOffice CRM, also with the navigator, and starting with a dashboard. In this dashboard, it's also possible to add multiple pages and define tiles, as we saw in one of the previous sessions as well. Of course, people who will be working in customer service departments will not always just go just logging in, ending up in CRM, pressing the service button, but very often that you just make a bookmark directly to this page, which is a easier and faster way always to open up your dashboard. Yeah, okay, so what has happened? Mr. Harry Jansma actually sent us this email about his invoice. And the first thing he receives is an automatic email. The automatic email says, well, dear Harry, thank you. Let's see if this works. Yeah. Thank you for your inquiry. So this is directly a confirmation that the email has landed somewhere. It also includes a reference number, just for any future correspondences, make this a lot easier. What it also did, it has created just some or proposed some FAQs which could probably be relevant for this question. Those FAQs are always proposed also based on keywords, so it looks something up like, hey, I had a problem with an invoice. So here are some possible FAQs regarding invoices. Of course, they will say that the inquiry will be dealt with as soon as possible, etc. And there's also a small sentence about how you can, as a customer, add extra information to this request, just by clicking the reply button and keeping the subject intact. Also, if you contact us, for example by phone, please supply the request number. And this is just a template, so it can be completely customized with logos, text, fonts, etc. So, in the meantime, we are looking at the dashboard, and actually the dashboard is showing me all the open requests, for example, per category. We see this one up on the top right. So we see how many product questions are currently open, how many orders, how many IT support, finance questions, and actually how many complaints. Also, depending on which category it is, we can either decide that things should be assigned automatically to a person or not. Something like complaints is very often very urgent, same as, for example, IT support, while finance questions could be less urgent. On the bottom, we can see which user actually owns what kind of request, and we also see one unassigned request. So as you can see, those charts are completely clickable. If I would go back to the dashboards, I can also click on the, for example, the finance department, and I'm actually missing my request number 208. Fortunately, I know the number at this time, so it is easy just to type in the number on the top right, and we can find it directly. So what do we see actually on this request? We can see, first of all, the title of the email. We see it on the left over here. We see the title of the email. We see to which customer it was automatically linked to, which is done just based on the email address. So because it was sent by Harry Jansma, it is automatically being linked to Harry Jansma. As you can see, those are also links. So you can just click on it and you will go directly to the customer card of Mr. Harry Jansma. So we can see if he has previous requests on a certain subject before. We can also see that Mr. Harry Jansma is linked to Coca-Cola Incorporated, and they of course have the request either by him or by his colleague, Mr. Don Johnson. So let's just click back to 208. So this way you can just surf around the whole system. Some extra things we can see, of course we can see the ID on the top right, but we also see a deadline. And the deadline is calculated based on the priorities that are given to certain requests. So for example, IT support questions can get a higher priority and a shorter deadline than, for example, finance questions. We also see who is actually currently the owner. We can see the status of the request, and we can see the category actually this request was entered to. Okay, so what I would like to do is actually to start handling this request, meaning that the first thing I'm going to do is to click on accept request. And currently we see that it directly says, well, I am the owner right now, so Niels is the owner, and the status is being moved from new to in progress. If I'm going back to this dashboard, I can see that the dashboard is automatically directly updated. So on the bottom left it shows this request in my queue of requests to handle, and we see of course the difference between everything which is new and the tickets that are already in process. So let's go back to request 208, And the first thing actually I want to ask this question is, well, it is nice that you're complaining about your invoice, but I would like to have a copy of this invoice. So I can click on reply and start typing. And, okay. Probably this is a question that I get a lot of times. Questions about invoices, and people always forget to send in a copy about this invoice. So therefore, it is easier just to make use of a reply template, which directly pulls in the whole set of data. Reply templates can be customized in the system by the administrator. I will show that later on. And it can contain things like logos. It also can contain things like pictures. Like if you call people for like a part number, you can do an image on where they can find a certain part number, for example. So I'm clicking on OK, and the email is directly being sent back to Mr. Harry Jansma. What we can see directly is that we build up some kind of loan. Like, first of all, we entered the message coming in from the customer. The second step is directly we send an answer to the customer. We can see who has sent this answer, and we can see when it was sent, and even to which email address it was sent to. In this screen, it is possible to gather also gather also extra data from other entities within SuperOffice. So I'm mainly showing request data now, of course, but it is also possible, for example, to show over here which sales rep is responsible for this customer, just to know this. For example, I'll put this one over here on the details tab. Okay, so I suppose that the email has already landed. Yes, it is. Yeah, so Harry got this receipt, and of course he would like to provide a scan of this receipt. So I'm going to reply this, and we have like invoice. Let me see if this works directly. Okay, and send it directly back. What I should have done over here is at least put this on waiting for customer and give the customer 1 hour or 1 day, for example, to react. Meaning that in this case we can directly get a track on how many time did it take for us to respond to the customer, because we also keep track on any status changes. So everyone in the whole system now can see that this request was handled, and actually the action is now residing within the customer. I hope that this worked correctly. Yeah. Actually, Niels, still being the owner of this request, already got a notification on the top right over here. You have a new message in request to IA. So directly, every time something happens with the request that I'm responsible for, I get notifications about this. Yes. So I can just open it up, and I can see the answer of Mr. Ariansma. So that is actually how we are, just gathering all the data together. Just because the customer was so kind of leaving the subject intact, it automatically gathers all the data together and builds up a thread regarding this request. So now we have our answer of this customer, and indeed we can see that there was only like 5% instead of the 50%. So we would like to send this actually to one of our sales colleagues. I saw previously that, you see, Natalie was the owner. And I would like to send a small message to Natalie because I would like to know if the customer is indeed correct about this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to swiftly change the owner to Natalie, who works in sales, and add a small comment. Alright, Nat, and you please check. Okay, so as you can see, until now we only have like what we call external messages, messages which are going back and forth to the customer, but we can also just add internal messages, which are messages used by communicating between colleagues or within teams. Natalie, also working in service, she also gets a notification, and she can see also that customer 208 actually appeared in her open request. So what she can do is just open it up, check if the customer was right, and just add another request. I can see that Natalie is working in Dutch. Hi Niels. This is correct. Please send a new invoice. And she just passes the one back actually to Niels in the finance department. So this is a very easy way just to collaborate within a request between colleagues across all kind of departments within an organization. So if I go back to my screen, of course, there was a notification and it appeared again back over here. The next thing, of course, I would like to do as working in the finance department is I would like to resend an invoice to my customer. So I'm going to reply back, dear Harry, it's a lot of R in the R, please and you are right. So, just like that. Of course, I would like to add a file to this, which is a new invoice, which is called new invoice. And there you go. So now you can see the complete history on something that we received from the customer, an answer, getting an answer back from the customer, doing some internal communication, and in the end solving the case towards the customer. And you can see that every step is really tracked, every step is completely logged, who did what at what time, and actually what was the content of all the messages that went around. So you don't have to CC anyone anymore in all kind of things. Also, what you saw over here is when sending out this message, or actually putting on the request to the colleague Natalie, is we did not have to, check whether I have CC'd or copied in all the relevant information, because all the relevant information is just in there in the request. Last step, of course, is to close. You can see over here that we have different statuses. So things come in on status new, then we accept that it gets in progress. Waiting for customer is a status that we can apply, but we can also apply the amount of time that we would like to give the customer to reply to us. And if this time has been overdue, it will automatically reopen for us as a reminder to send out an email to the customer again, hey, we asked you about this copy of this invoice, but we did not receive anything. Just to over-deliver this customer experience for this customer. Same is also, of course, for waiting for supplier, and by distinguishing perfectly between in process, waiting for customer, waiting for supplier, where we can see where is actually always this request delaying in the process. Waiting for supplier, even more. Of course, if we would send out a email to a supplier, we want to hunt the supplier because we need an answer for our customer. In the end, it's always, of course, possible to close a request. So this is actually one of the most common processes which is handled in SuperOffice Service. Any questions so far?
Does your support team in SuperOffice use this? Or
Yes,
do you
of
have
course,
those?
yeah.
So you don't have a separate system?
No. I could say that we use Zendesk or something, but of course it is SuperOffice, and we also use it for a lot of different processes. So of course we use it for our support team. We can have things like get stuff coming in from support, but then for example they say, well, it's not really support, but it's the consultant who has to do it. So they just put it on back to the consultant without having to copy in all the relevant information, and everyone can always see, have track on who is owning the request.
Yes, if the finance team would like to, in the dashboard view, only see their own category, is there a smart way of handling that?
Yeah. There is, when defining this dashboard, there's always a big difference on what do I want to see and what am I allowed to see. So based on the categories, it is of course possible to define who is actually a member of a category. And we could define that, for example, only people working in the complaints department are allowed to see those complaints, and not that people from IT support can see complaints about IT support, for example. So that is either one way, just to do this based on roles. It is also possible to just go to the statistics, define kind of a selection, and make that one visible for the dashboard. So those are actually two different ways of approaching to reach this goal.
Is there an option to set a text bot to set automatically categories, response times, or something like that?
Yes, we have something in SuperOffice called email filters, which is on the email part. That's also where we define mailboxes. And email filters can also be used for regular expression, meaning that if we find something called a printer or something called complaint, or that it automatically says, well, then it has to go in that category and has to get a higher priority just based on the words that are used in the incoming emails.
Do you have a split between your external and internal IT support cases?
Yeah. And Magnus can tell you all about that.
Yeah, we have a closed category for internal tickets, and all the external tickets are for the sales and technician has access to it.
Yeah.
That's just, if a consultant goes to a customer, it's easier for them to see what support tickets they have already been having with support before they go out there. Same with sales.
So in our case, for example, people working in support can see project questions but cannot see IT support, because that is something only for the IT support people. Okay.
So it's also possible to have, when you have customers with different contracts, support contracts, that you check it in the email, what for a customer is he, and what have you for a contract, and different time spans or something, response times or...
Yeah. And let's go to this request 208. And let's go to the Coca-Cola company. And what we can see over here is that we also can define a certain priority for a certain customer. This means that if either Mr. Harry Jansma or Mr. Don Johnson sends in an email, it will look up, well, those are connected to Coca-Cola Inc. And those will always have priority high. Priority high can also be redefined as being priority bronze, silver, or gold, or
Yeah.
whatever your SLA terms are. Okay, so
One question.
no, so
You closed the ticket.
yes.
What happens if the customer sends a message again? Will the ticket be closed and will a new ticket be created, or will it be opened again and show a new ticket?
Yeah, very good question. As we saw in one of the first steps, is that as soon as the customer reacts, that the request is automatically being reopened and postponed to the user. Of course, there could be different reactions for the customer. There could be something like, well, my new invoice is still not correct, which of course means that it has to be reopened, or it could be something simple like, hey, thank you. In both cases, since we do not distinguish between that, it will be reopened, and either the user can just close it or not. There is a possibility also to find extra statuses, something like what we often use, archive or super closed, which if in that case something is, that status is chosen, that it's never reopened but a new request will be created. Okay, so another process could be not an incoming email but an incoming phone call. So, for example, the phone rings and we have on the phone Mr. Glenn Livet. Mr. Glenn Livet from the beverage company. Very often if you call to a support desk yourself, either by a mobile provider, internet provider, or whatever, they always ask you actually who you are. They never listen directly and dive into your problem, but first of all they also do kind of a customer identification. So that's also what we do over here. So Mr. Glenn Livet is calling, and actually I want to know who Mr. Glenn Livet is. Is he directly connected to a customer? Does this customer, for example, have an SLA or not? And did he, for example, send in an email yesterday already for the same problem as he has been calling about today? So therefore, we always say, well, before you start registering your request, always find your customer, get some context, and see if this is really something new. If this is something new, we can just directly click on registering a new quick request. New quick request is a very easy screen, just with a few fields to fill in with someone on the phone. So it's actually a problem with the delivery of something, which I would like to put in for the complaints. I don't know who is working in the complaint department, so I just leave that to the system to decide who is going to pick up this problem. It will be priority high. Just with a small message on the things that you agreed upon on the phone. So anyone within service can register this one, a request, and directly assign it to the right department or to the right person. So now we're just clicking OK. We can see that number 209 was registered. We see a deadline which is automatically created. And we also can see that Steve got this request automatically assigned because Steve and Bruce are actually working in the complaint department, and the system decides, well, we are just assigning this one by one with an even assignment method. So also based on the category, we can decide who is working with, has to work with these requests and what kind of assignment do we need to use. I will show you later on how that works in the configuration stuff. From now on, Steve will get a notification that he was the proud owner of a new request, and he can just start working with it by replying or adding comments, etc. So now it's a little bit independent on actually what was the source or what was the channel that we used for this request, mail versus phone. Actually the process behind it is the same. And what you see if you're not using a system, that this process is very diverse depending on which channel is used and on which department will it accidentally land. There's one more thing about the request, because I'm actually a little bit curious, and I promised to this customer that this problem would be solved today. So, but that is actually a promise that I made, and it's always hard to make promises yourself if you're not really sure if your colleagues will deliver that promise. So therefore, I'm marking this one as a favorite. By marking this one as a favorite, I get different advantages. One of the things is, for example, I can just open up the dashboard and have a separate tab for all my favorite requests, meaning that I can directly show if those requests are really processed well. Same as over here. We saw that one this morning also about favorite customers. Well, you can also have your favorite or less favorite requests. Also works directly with a tooltip, and from here I can just open it. But there's even more about adding it as a favorite. It's not only about consulting the system whether this request has been picked up yet, but I get the same notifications as I would be still the owner of the request. So I can still give this request to someone else, but I get the same notification like, hey, there is a new request, or this request has passed the deadline, or things like that. So that's always a good thing about marking them as a favorite.
Will it help to get information on that phone call you have created down? Because it's a user message.
Yeah. Good question. By default, it does not get a confirmation, because very often you already have like a confirmation on the phone, like, hey, I did receive your message, because you are talking to this person, and you can decide that you would register it in the system. There are several ways to solve such a case. I mean, we could very easily define an extra template just to manually send the same message afterwards. But it's of course also possible to automate these things with some macro script. So just out of the box it doesn't, but it's really a lot of configuration to make that work.
Does the star depend on this if the case is open or closed? If you close the case, you can still find it on favorites?
Very good question. It is somewhere it's a personal preference. If you would like favorites to be unfavorited automatically if requests are closed or not. So that's a little bit depending on how you would like to approach your favorites. Do you want to first check if it is solved and if it's solved correctly and then unfavorite them, or do you want the system to do that for you? But that might cause the fact that you keep losing track on certain stuff.
Is there an option when the ticket or the request is closed that there is an automatic email to ask to rate this ticket or request, that you can have a response if all is right?
Yeah, we have over here, we have something called CRM script, and using CRM script you can either create scripts, but it's also very easy just to create a macro, like a new macro based on the, based on the trigger, where is it request closed. So meaning that once the request is closed, we can do magic stuff like sending out an email. Okay, this is mainly the dashboards that you can see. As I told you before, this is like what is happening now, but of course you also would like to see some statistics. Statistics are just over here. And I must say that this is one of the easiest statistic modules actually there is, because it works very interactively also with your configuration. So just by clicking on standard reports, you directly already get a lot of standard things. So let me just click on the amount of created requests, and I can see over 12 months how many requests we actually got in just by one click. There, of course, are a lot of different statistics. Top left is a little bit similar to what we already have in the dashboard, but I think things like trends is very interesting, and also, of course, number of replies and messages is very interesting. So this was just 12 months the amount of created requests. Also possible to divide this by category. Fortunately, we have someone who once created a magic demo script which automatically creates a lot of requests in your database, so I did not have to collect all this data manually just for today. As you can see, it directly shows a lot of data. It is possible just to click over here and say, well, orders, it's not really what we call, well, I wanted this statistic, so you can just filter them out. Or there's even a possibility also to choose your criteria over here. So for example, I only want it in the past 6 months. Or even to have it, put this one back. Yep. Or it's even possible to change the way the statistics should look. So if I press the small pencil over here, I get a small screen and I can define everything. So the first thing I want to know is to give it a little bit other look, because I don't think that this is, I mean, it looks very nice, but the readability is not that good exactly. So what I would like to have actually is something what we call a column chart. So we can do like normal column charts like this. Or, but I think that the disadvantage of this one is that I don't have any totals. So I would like to have a stacked column chart. And of course, for people who like a little bit more fancy, I can put it in 3D as well. So this is actually how easy that you can change all those requests in SuperOffice Service, or just statistics. Let me get this one off over here. This group by is automatically also based on the configuration of your system. So we have a lot of standard fields, like I can do this like per category or per owner. Let me try it. This is good. So now I can see how many Bruce, Natalie, Niels, and Steve actually picked up in every month. But I also added one extra field, and this extra field is called, I just call it product. And it has the deviation between product X, Y, and Z. So if I choose to do it by product right now, it will just give this statistic by product. And just by adding this field, it will automatically be available in other statistics, so you don't have to do anything special around that. This is a very good overview, but in a lot of cases I would like to know which cases we had on product X in May. And that's actually very easy, because over here I can show my reading pane to the right, and then I get kind of a split screen. Meaning that on the left side I still have the same charts, but if I just click on one of those data points, on the right side I can automatically get the request related to that point that I clicked on in the charts. And just by clicking on it again, you can dive directly into that specific case. So that's how you can get from an overview to very detailed in just a few clicks. Okay, so this is actually my the chart that I created. But of course I would not like to do this every time that I'm trying to get this overview. So there's a very nice solution for that, meaning that I can also just save it as a selection. OK, and just by favoriting it, it is just available within one click over here, and it's always the same data, same layout of your statistics. So this is actually, and the good thing is you don't have to do anything for this data because it will collect automatically just by working with the request. So other statistics, it's not really going to show, but I can tell you something about. Is, for example, also the number of replies and messages that we are sending out to customers. Number of replies means the number of times actually that we send a reply back to the customer. In other words, how often do we harass our customers with getting more information from them? Or how many messages in totally did I need on average for a request? Which means how efficient actually am I working? I saw statistics about on average like 20, which really means that one request goes through someone's hands like 20 times, which is quite often in case of working efficiently.
Yeah, this is to count the time effort, the internal time effort.
No, this is not the internal time effort, but it's just the number of times that you either send a reply to a customer.
Yeah, but it is possible.
It is definitely possible.
Okay.
And that is in actually in other statistics available. This one actually will show you how many times actually there was behind status changes. So for example, whether someone was laying internally or externally back at the customer. But we also have fields on, let me see. Because, me. Yeah, if I start replying, you can also measure actually the time that people are working on certain requests on top over here. It requires kind of a discipline always to just directly click on something when you are really are handling this request. Of course, it's also possible to just add up some extra values over there. And we have done some customizations as well, where we say, well, we think that every answer is just 5 minutes, about writing the answer, sending a reply back to the customer. So it's just always 5 minutes, and we can do statistics on that as well. I don't see a lot of customers really doing in-depth analysis on the use time. Actually, I only know one, and those are really, accumulating all the time that everyone is using on every request during the whole day to see if they are really working 8 hours a day. But it is very extreme.
But you can build it.
How much time you have used on the case?
Yeah.
And then create our invoice.
Yeah. So if I put, for example, this one on 50 minutes, okay. Let me see if it is here. I can do it. Yeah. So there are all kind of fields that we can add in those screens, and one of them is the time spent, for example. So how many time is spent internally, externally, but also. Seems that I'm missing a field, but indeed there's also a total. Here it is, yeah. Like total time spent on the request, okay. And now it will show the complete amount of time that is indeed spent on this request.
If I would like to bill this customer for the support, how can I do that?
Several possibilities. There is a built-in invoicing system which enables you to log some extra hours. It is also possible to create some extra fields, for example on message level, where you can decide a little bit more on what do you actually want to register per either per message or per request. We do have a large customizability in SuperOffice Service, creating extra tables, extra screens, extra reports, so that is possible, but still we cannot send invoices from SuperOffice. So always keep that one in mind as well. Yeah?
When you speak about extra fields, is it possible to create, not a category, but with beside category there, you can also choose, for example, if I'm doing support, SuperOffice support, and I want to also put that this support is about web tools.
Yeah, okay.
So how many
Yeah.
cases do I have about web tools, and I can find that?
Yeah, so in the
Search for
statistics, as I showed you on the products, we could do something, an extra field called area or type or something and that is directly available in your statistics. As Sver showed yesterday, from next version it's also possible to make those fields directly editable here, since currently I have to go to actions, edit request, and decide somewhere over here that this is actually product Z.
Or per request?
Sorry?
So it's not possible right now to do it, to have it...
Not in this
Okay.
version.
Not
Next
in this
version.
In the next
The next
version, yeah.
We can customize that pound.
Yeah, okay.
It is, the whole screen can be rebuilt from scratch according to all kind of wishes, but that specific functionality will be in the next release just by default.
Mhm. If we haven't used a lot of service yet, but if we wanted our IT support team, which is just internal for our various companies, to use this system, does that mean that we don't need licenses for everyone, but they need to be registered with an email address and phone number on the company contact card?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a few more things that I would like to show you. There is also a possibility, I think I have it right over here, to work in some kind of compact mode in SuperOffice Service. This compact mode is especially available if you want to work with SuperOffice Service, for example on your phone or on your tablet. So it does not give the exact same functionality and experience as you have in the full web line, but still gives you a possibility to just open up your own open requests and directly go through the history of such an open request, and even the possibility for editing and replying directly from your compact mode screens. So this is
part of the package.
yeah, yeah.
So how do that?
It is if you work on SuperOffice Online, it is automatically when we do / mobile service, then it will automatically go into this compact mode version. If you are running SuperOffice on premise, then it will do this automatically based on your device. So if you just log into service on your phone, then it will automatically go into compact mode. Okay. Of course, in our scenario where Harry Jansma just sent in a customer to the finance department, we are believing that all the customers are educated very well, so they know that if they have a finance question, that they have to send it to the finance@domainname.com. But of course, we also have customers who are not that very well educated. So for them, it's also possible, let me see, there's also a possibility that they, for example, just send in an email directly to a sales guy or directly to a personal mailbox. So in this case, Harry Jansma has sent an email to Niels from Broekhoven with a question about product gigs. So now there are two things I can do. I can either just click on reply and reply the answer directly from my mailbox, or use those very handsome functions from Gmail. But of course there's a much better way, and that is just go over here and directly reroute the incoming email to a new request. So if I click over here, then I get a choice, should this actually be sent to finance or should it be sent to support? And from there, it's just the same story again. Last but not least, there are a lot of things in the admin over here where you can just, if you have the right role, decide actually what are my categories, which are the priorities that I would like to define, which statuses would I like to use. So that's all just to be found over there. And over here in the knowledge base, we can define things like FAQ items and reply templates. Last thing, SuperOffice Service is available for all SuperOffice users with the user plans either Service or the user plans Complete. But there is, of course, one thing, is that as with all user plans, everyone can see everything within SuperOffice. Meaning that if I go back to SuperOffice CRM, every user can go to the request tab and see also all the incoming requests from this customer over there. They can see the overview, and they can even just click on it and see who is actually owning this request right now and which communication has gone back and forth to the customer. I got a very subtle signal from Magnus that we are on time, so I would like to thank you for your attention and enjoy it.